It's Wingin' It Wednesday, driven by Service Chevrolet Cadillac.
Hey, good morning. Welcome back to Acadiana's Morning News. We have reached that time of the week. Wingin' It Wednesday, brought to you by our friends over at Service Cadillac. Carol Ross, Stafford Barnett, and Warren Caudle all join us here in the studio.
Good morning.
And we're still trying to figure this out. We're still trying to figure out where we want to be on stage. Because I've moved around every week for the last 4 weeks to a different spot. But I think I decided, you know what, Rob? Just stay in your regular spot. You'll feel the most comfortable.
There you go.
And you can drive. Right. How about that?
Are we making you uncomfortable, Rob?
I'm trying. Here's the problem. For 4 weeks, I tried to make you guys more comfortable, and then I decided that's terrible. Y'all aren't strangers anymore. You're not. These guys haven't been for a long time. And so now you're going to have to be uncomfortable. I'm going to be comfortable.
Good.
So start winging it right there. We've been talking this morning about the story that had kind of had been going around about the surviving family members of the Lafayette police officer and their insurance. We talked to Councilman Kenneth Boudreau in the last hour, and then since then we've even got a little bit more information. But we'll ask for the panelists' comments coming up. Well, Bernie, what did you find out?
So when we talked to Councilman Kenneth Boudreau, he was talking about the situation that the last time that this was encountered by our government was 40 years ago. And so obviously at that point, the laws were different. You know, what you have on the books is different. So what they're going to do is wait until the funeral has been held on Friday, and it's something they're going to continue to look at the policy now, and they do intend completely to make changes. And so I would assume that they're going to have to do that retroactively for this situation. But as far as working out the details, he can't give specific details, and that's just the way of it. But two people assuring. Kenneth Boudreau assuring last night and then this morning, and then Mayor President Joel Robideau at the council meeting, according to our news partners, reassuring that they were going to be looking at it. But the question does remain. Another officer contacted me this morning to say, okay, but what about COBRA?
Okay.
Then I was looking up and trying to find benefits. So I asked another person about what exists. There is a state fund and there is a federal fund that was established. The federal fund was established in 2016, and the federal fund sets aside a certain amount of money for officers who are killed in the line of duty. And there is also a state fund that sets aside a certain amount of money for an officer killed in the line of duty.
So, Carol, I have to ask, does it seem strange? Because it seems odd to me that we wouldn't have a policy on this completely buttoned up, because we have people out on the streets each and every day putting their life on the line. We talk about that, and then this comes up, and it's like now we're trying to figure out, oh gosh, how do we deal with issues that come up when one actually is killed?
Well, I can tell you who's thought about it a lot: the officers on duty, the officers who work for our police department, and they've probably thought about it a whole lot, which is why some of them are a little bit disturbed about this and a little bit worried. COBRA is it's a tricky thing. It's got a bunch of different amendments. Well, there have been some changes over the years. One of the things that I read was that a surviving spouse of someone killed in the line of duty or something could get up to 36 months of coverage. On the other hand, in some cases, they may have to pay for the continued coverage. And for some people, that might be unaffordable,
So that was one of the questions.
Right, exactly.
That prompted the people going last night.
Last night, yeah.
So it's a really complicated issue, but I can tell you who's thought about it a lot, and that's the folks who have to live, who are officers in the police department, and probably, because you all mentioned that there's a little bit of discontent about some of these things. There should be some solid policies on this, that clearer policies that can reassure those who are, that if they're in the line of duty, their family, their surviving family is going to be taken care of. Now, on the other hand, we know what pensions and benefits and all those things cost governments. So it's a tricky balance that has to be weighed here.
Warren, is this common sense to you?
Yes and no. Do you have policies in place? No, yeah, you should have. And that, I don't know. It's just the thing with how much do you do? What do you do? When do you do it? I think what we need to do right now is everybody needs to just step back. I do agree with Kenneth Boudreau. We need to step back, take a deep breath, and let the emotions get out of the way, and then turn around and get together and come up with something that makes sense if it's not already in place. One of the things I agree with him on is that, when you start talking about the first responders, the people that work for LCG and all of that, that is one life worth more than other lives and what have you. And what he said, a lineman out there who gets killed in the line of duty, somebody who's out there working on a road crew and they get run over and whatever, what do you do for these people? And it's the same thing, it kind of goes back to what I look at a lot of times, is what do you do for military people when one of them gets killed in an act of war? The family gets so much money, whatever, and that I think the benefit they really get are very limited from that point on. And that, just like after 9/11, there was a rush in there after 9/11 that the victims at the World Trade Center, those who perished, it's my understanding that their families got an average of $1.5 million each.
Yeah, there was a lot of money.
$1.5 million each for an act of terror, but yet when you got killed in Afghanistan or Iraq, your family gets $100,000, and you get a little gold star pin to wear. So anyway, it's a complicated deal, and that it is something we need to address.
Stafford, your thoughts?
First off, my condolences to Officer Middlebrook's family. I can't imagine what they're going through right now. I know that spouses of police officers, worry at night, and this type of thing just only makes it worse for them. So I hope this family finds a way to find peace, because it's tough. We don't have a system in place because we haven't had to deal with something like this since the 1960s. It's been 40 years. So this kind of caught us off guard. You don't really plan on losing an officer while they're at work. And so one of the things I'm thankful for is I believe that we have a council who has empathy, who wants to do the right thing. And while we may not have something in place to fix it immediately, I believe that between the mayor and the council, they're going to find a way to make sure that she's taken care of. And I think that Warren brings up a good point. If we're going to, this kind of stuff makes you take a step back and look at everything and go, what do we need to do to be more prepared? And if we don't have a plan in place for the linemen or the guys working the road or for LCG employees or LUS employees who risk themselves, this is the type of stuff that we need to go out and plan for. So I'm thankful that we've got the leadership in place who are willing to look at this. I'm glad they're talking about it now. I hope we find a way to communicate our sense of urgency to our public servants who are worried about this, because I think one of the worst things that we could have happen is have the guys who are there to serve and protect us potentially lose some of their motivation to do it.
We are coming up on another election cycle. Early voting is going on here locally. We're going to talk to the panelists next about how that's going. Do people know enough about the races? People know enough about the issues? We'll get into that next when Wingin' It Wednesday continues on News Talk 96.5 KPEL.
My darling, I can't get enough of your love, babe. Girl, I don't know why. I can't get enough of your love, babe.
But can you get enough of our election process?
Yeah.
I can. I've kind of had enough.
Unfortunately, I think people are like,
Almost like a necessary evil, I guess. Well, Warren was going to be first up in this segment, but guess what?
He's not.
You
know
missed
what?
your line at the deli.
I think he gave you an answer.
Yeah, I think his answer is
I'm
he's
outta here.
protesting this election, I guess. Stafford, let's start with you. Early voting underway now. We have a treasurer's race, some public service commissioners, and some amendments. Yet I don't even hear people talking about that because so much other things are being talked about. Do people know? What are your thoughts on the election?
No, I don't think a lot of people know about the election that's coming up. If you look at the seats that are being filled, one of them is John Kennedy's seat, and I think that that's an important lesson for people to learn, that we could end up with somebody like John Kennedy again in the treasurer's seat, who rubber stamped Jindal's budget plans for years, right? So it is an important election, and it's tough to see where these guys stand because A lot of them run on the things that they think that are going to get them elected. They talk about their stance on, right to life and guns and everything else. And you sit there and go, I just want to know how you're going to manage a budget. You're the treasurer.
That's what really matters at this point.
Right. I saw an ad for a public service commissioner talking about wanting to protect gun rights, and I just like shook my head. I'm like, you guys decide on utilities and monopoly business in the state of Louisiana. What does this have to do with anything, right? So I hope that we get some turnout. It's one of the things that you kind of sit back and think about, and one of the things that I struggle with is, let's say that we have 20% turnout for this election, right? Uh-huh. That means that all it takes is 11% of the voting population to decide who our public service commissioner and our treasurer is. And that's concerning, right? It's the same thing with the amendments. We've got 3 amendments on the ballot, and I think one of them is really important to point out. There is an amendment for a homestead exemption for the surviving spouses of killed in the line of duty, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And I think it's very timely that we've had something happen here, and we have an opportunity locally to vote on something like that. So I think it's important that people get engaged. If you don't know what your ballot looks like, go vote. The app, GEAUXVOTE. It was something that was invested in by the local Chamber of Commerce. It's been absolutely phenomenal tool for people to see where their ballot location is, or where their voting location is, their precinct, what's on the ballot. And I think it's important that we do it. I will tell you, my last point, my biggest frustration with this is that we've got this election, and then we've got another vote coming up in November. And I wish that as a state, we would find a way to marry some of these so that we could save some money with this stuff.
Carol, I'm sure you're all about saving the money. It's a big problem with the elections. They're pricey.
Well, yes, they are, but they're important. And unfortunately, according to our Secretary of State, the turnout is going to be dismal for this election. The treasurer is a really, really important position. I don't recall John Kennedy rubber stamping anything Jindal did. In fact, they were at loggerheads quite often throughout his tenure as treasurer. And besides that, he doesn't have any real input into the devising of the budget, which really frustrated him quite a lot. He does have custody of the funds. He does direct the investment. He does oversee the disbursement. He's chairman. He works on the LAMP, which is the asset management program, and of course the unclaimed properties program. It's a really important position. Unfortunately, what worries a lot of people like me is that the mayor's race in New Orleans is going to dominate in here because of the interest and the number of candidates in New Orleans for mayor. That the tilt is going to be on that side for whoever they go after. But what is really amazing to me, Derek Edwards, the only Democrat in the race, he's leading in the polls simply because of the fact that he is a Democrat, but his own party is not backing him. They're backing Neil Reiser, and in fact have sent out a flyer. Karen Carter Peterson, she's the chairman of the Democratic Party, and she says, be bold, because that's the group that got her into power, bold. And that they've been around for a long, long time in New Orleans. She sent out a mailer with a picture of her and Hillary Clinton and a sample ballot saying that this is who we need to. The Louisiana State Democratic Party endorses Neil Reiser because he is the most progressive candidate in the race. Now, say the word progressive to a conservative, that does not sit very well. So we'll see what plays out there. Schroeder has a good base in New Orleans. He's from that area. This is going to be really interesting. They all believe that Derek Edwards is going to be in the runoff. I doubt it.
Warren, you've been wanting to talk about this election for months now, and we've just been oppressing you. So you know what? Here you go. I'm going to give you an extra 10 seconds. Go ahead.
All right. Talking about low turnouts and all that, I don't really care about whether it's low turnout or high turnout. What I want to know is, are the people who are casting ballots, are they paying attention, or do they cast a ballot based on reasoning and sound judgment? And I think sometimes that's a lot more important than it is just instead of having just a whole mob of people go vote. And, but these are important elections. I do agree with the thing like the state treasurer's job, that what is the job. I think after Kennedy, it has come more to the forefront that people have begun paying more of attention to it. Does anybody even know who the state treasurer was before that? I know that Mary Landry was at one time, and that
Ken Duncan, maybe.
Who?
Exactly.
I was about to say Bernie's the only one that might even have something close. I have no idea.
I think it was Duncan.
But also if you look at your paper currency, you have a signature on there from the Treasurer of the United States. And what does that person do? Nothing. You know, it's basically just a ceremonial job where the only thing they do is their name shows up on the
When
currency.
you officially have custody of the money.
I don't think the Treasurer does of the United States, but
Officially, but, you know, it's not like it's a suitcase that you're holding on to. You know what I mean?
well, there's a great story about John Cooksey carrying the Treasurer of the United States suitcase on an airplane one time. And, but, you know, I did vote early. I think that my wife and I voted probably the first 30 minutes or first hour that the polls were open. And, you know, this is going to be kind of interesting that you got the Public Service Commission race, which I am in that district. It takes in just a very small part of Lafayette Parish, and that's going to be an interesting race. I think Lenore Whitney's got the lead in that, and probably will win. I hope so. And as far as the treasurer's race, I'm one of those that says anybody but Reiser. When I see the name Reiser, I see /Jindal.
Well, we will. Okay, Reiser /Jindal. All right.
Jindal was a progressive.
We'll cover this, of course, here on KPEL, on air, online, leading up to election night, and then full coverage that night as well. Warren, you feel satisfied with that statement?
Yes, but I think that you're bullying us this morning when you come in here saying that I'm going to sit over here and you're going to sit there and I'm the one calling the shot. You know,
well,
so I think we need special counseling.
I was going to say, talk to your union representative. He doesn't exist.
You're going to hear from my agent about this.
It's Wingin' It Wednesday, driven by Service Chevrolet Cadillac.
All right. Guess I'm going to have to give up my car. You can still buy my car over at Service Cadillac.
Baby,
It's an
XT5.
XT5. You know what? I'll be honest. I've told them over there to hold it for Carol. Because eventually she's just going to wake up and say, I need it.
I want it.
Hey, is it a pearlized white?
It is. I
like
think
that
it's called
pearlized-
Arctic White or something like that.
Anyway,
It's an XT5, which is a crossover SUV, creamy like butter interior.
SUVs.
It's great.
Carol doesn't do SUVs. Sorry.
But Carol, you come across as someone who would be at the soccer field earlier than anyone else on a Sunday morning.
Are you serious?
Joking. Anyway, 1212 Ambassador Caffrey and 1214 Ambassador Caffrey at Service Chevrolet Cadillac. Oh, by the way, stop by the wash. Went by the wash yesterday.
Yeah.
It's pretty sad. It's like when you go to your regular bar and they know the drink. I have a problem with the process at some of those things. Okay, you can't put the soap on my windshield and then motion for me to come up, and because every time I complain about it, and I just sit there and I'm like, no, I can't see I can't see you, you know. Anyway, after my incident inside a car wash, we won't go there. Anyway, so guess what? They come over now and they use their hand and wipe like a 4x4
So you can
inch
see.
square, just so I can see them.
Because the
and
anxiety.
that is service. Okay,
I'm telling you, dude. It's
service
in the
and
name.
service. 1212 Ambassador Caffrey and 1214 Ambassador Caffrey.
I understand that.
It has been a busy news week as you guys who have listened and interact with us on social media and via email and stuff. Lots of different things going on, and the investigation continues over in Las Vegas where that shooting happened. We ended it with 59 people dead, hundreds injured and in area hospitals. We've heard about how they found him with a smoke detector, and now looking a lot closer at what he actually had and the weapons that were there. Warren, I want to start with you on this. You and I and Stafford, Bernie, we got together. Carol got a hall pass yesterday about some of this stuff, about the weapons, about
She threw
how
her phone in a lake, right? No, I'm
that's
just
what
kidding.
she claims. But
in the garbage.
about the weapons that were there that they're finding. Now we're starting to see. We now know 23 guns and 12 bump fire stocks in the hotel room. What are your thoughts on this?
My thoughts on this is that there's a whole lot more at stake here than just what kind of guns that this guy had, and that I think this thing it's part of a movement. If you go back in history and you look, that you have any time that the socialists try to take over a country, they're going to wind up using terrorist tactics to do it. It happened in the former Soviet Union when Russia had their civil war, and then when it came out and had the revolution, they always start that way where they go around terrorizing the people, and they do shootings, they do mass shootings. I don't know of any movement were that the people who were for liberty for people that acted in any such of a way. And you know, Hitler did exactly the same thing, which I've said before, just like the group, the Antifa and such stuff who run around, the Klan, Ku Klux Klan, the same way. They're all leftist causes who want to be in complete control of big government, and they want to exterminate the competition. And you look at them, there is absolutely no difference. When they're running around with masks on, burning cars, tearing up buildings, shooting people. They go over to the shoot up the Steve Scalise and the congressman over there. You know, that was a deal where that it was general mayhem in the worst sort. And when this thing happens, I mean, it's just going to keep on, and it's going to keep on until we finally sit down and really address it for what it is.
You know, Stafford, you have young kids, as do I, and I feel like I almost see things through a little bit of a different lens, because it's not just my lifetime what we're worried about their lifetime. And as these shootings, we now know that it's a record number of people killed in that, you know, in a shooting like that, a mass shooting. Does it just continue to get worse?
I think, unfortunately, the answer to that's yes. So I want to address what Warren said first. You just threw out a lot of stuff: socialist conspiracy theories, Hitler, Antifa, KKK. So they're all leftists. And I want to talk to you about why that's bad for society, okay? When we take something and we make everything a bipartisan issue instead of looking at the actual facts, we fuel anger on both sides, right? And in reality, I think that the parties are very divided right now, and we need to find ways to bring people together, okay? So with that being said, we don't know what happened, right? We don't know where his mental health was. If it's a mental health issue, if there's a tumor in his brain, we don't know any of this stuff, and it's very, very early on. I will tell you, I am a big supporter of the Second Amendment, right? And one of the things as a society that we do when this type of stuff happens is we throw out slippery slope arguments. We throw out, well, if they ban bump stocks, what's next, right? And there's a reason those aren't allowed in a courtroom, right? Because they're illogical arguments. The answer is, you know, whatever happens, right? So if they ban bump stocks, it means that bump stocks become illegal. It doesn't mean that they're going to take away your right to concealed carry or any of that kind of stuff. So this is a great argument and one of the things that I struggle with, and I have friends who are gun instructors, and we struggle with it too, right? There are people who go out and say we need constitutional carry. I struggle with the idea that anybody who's never had training on the laws or firing a gun can go in and buy a gun and put it in their purse or carry it on their person. I don't see the need for bump stocks. And again, I'm an avid shooter. I'm a fan of guns. I love firepower, right? And look, there's, you know, the bump stocks are not the only thing out there. They're now binary triggers. There are ways to get around this workaround, and I'm kind of almost glad that we're having this discussion and we're getting some of the gun enthusiasts are getting kind of called out a little bit. One of the things that kind of disgusted me is if you go online right now, bump stocks are sold out, right? And this is what happens when we have a rush. When the Newton massacre happened, what happened? The prices of ARs went through the roof. Everybody went and bought them because they were afraid the government was going to ban them. It's just tough because I think about the parents who lost kids in Newton and the people who lost families in Las Vegas. And I know I'm over my time, and I'm sorry, but I struggle, and I'm worried about, you know, where we go as a society from here.
Carol.
Well, I'm going to be Goldilocks in this because I'm kind of in between both of my colleagues. I do agree with Warren that these kinds of things force people into thinking more security and willing to give up freedom, which is how a lot of these revolutionary causes start. People get so frustrated. They want to be safe, so they want to be secure, so they're willing to give up a little more of their freedom and a little more of their freedom and a little more. And pretty soon they have neither freedom or security, to paraphrase Franklin. So it really is a thorny issue. But I will say this, banning bump stocks is not even close to being the issue. The problem in a lot of these cases is the people are, you know, what happened? Let me just say this. Who was not even looking at this guy with 10 suitcases? You know, when I stay in a hotel room, I assume that the people who clean the room are going to look in the drawers, look in the suitcases and everything else. What the heck was going on there? They saw these 10 suitcases. They never looked to see that this guy had all these guns.
We did hear that the housekeeping only came in one time over the course of several days. So,
well, somebody surely noticed 10 suitcases coming in, and the fact that he actually took out the little eye hole, the peephole on the door so that he could put in a camera that saw both ways. Yeah. I mean, this guy was well prepared and devilishly evil.
And this wasn't a cheap room.
No.
The pictures of the suite.
Well, he apparently was a high roller.
Yeah,
he was a high
nice
roller.
suite,
He had gambled a lot of money over the years. So that could be why they looked the other way. Because the guy had gambled and lost a lot of money over the years, and so they looked the other way. Well, anyway, it's a really thorny issue, and I really am not a fan of knee-jerking any kind of legislation because it doesn't work. No matter how much legislation you put in, you got crazy people out there, you have drug-addicted people out there. The people who would never do anything like that will be negatively affected. And that's the law-abiding people. We see that over and over again. Look in Chicago. Look in the places that have banned guns to the degree that they could. And they are the worst in terms of gun violence.
Warren, wrap this one up for us.
Yeah, I was accused of being a conspiracy theorist and talking about socialists. I guess it's a conspiracy theorist to say that the Ku Klux Klan did not intend to take over the country and to rule by default. And that I suppose it was a conspiracy theorist that Hitler was not a socialist, of National Socialism, and he did not kill millions of people when he took over Germany. And I guess it's a conspiracy theorist that when the socialists took over Russia, that Stalin did not kill 30 million of his own people just to show who was in charge. I guess it's a conspiracy theorist that Mao Zedong, who was a socialist that took over China, did not kill 45 million of his own people. So, I mean, those are not facts, I was told, but those are just simply conspiracy theories.
Warren,
I'll let you respond, then we need to wrap up.
Warren, that's absolute insanity. That has absolutely nothing to do with what this guy did. You're saying that he's a socialist, communist, all that stuff. Well, there's zero evidence of that. Zero evidence of that. And when you throw this kind of stuff out there, you create fear in people that creates reactionary measures.
Well, there's a time there should be fear in people, and I think the time is now.
What kind of government is formed when you rule by fear? Do you know what the name of that is?
Yes, sir.
What is it?
Called a socialist government.
Fascism, brother.
And fascism is socialism. Fascism is socialism.
It is.
Guys,
you understand the difference between fascism and socialism?
Listen, you can't make up facts to fit your narrative. You cannot make up facts.
Not.
You are.
You are.
You have zero evidence that this guy was connected to any party, that he had any desire to overthrow the government.
I did not say this guy did, but if you look at these other things that's going on,
what are we talking about?
Well, look at the guy who shot
do you want to talk about stuff that have fit?
That didn't happen 50 years ago. Yeah, that's all the same. But look at the Antifa. Look at the Antifa group who took to the streets when Trump was inaugurated.
Nothing to do with the shooting in Vegas.
It does create a very destabilized atmosphere.
We're going to come back to talk about the Supreme Court, some fireworks there yesterday.
I'd have to say this. It does create a destabilized atmosphere, which then leads to people demanding more security, and that's where you start losing your freedoms.
I think everyone got a chance to rebut. It's 7:48.
I'm now sufficiently frightened.
Yeah, you got to wait. You got to wait on this one.
We can't do it on
because it's not on topic.
Yeah.
Can't do it.
Everybody's off topic. Okay, so
Stafford and I were having an adult conversation while you three kids were messing around.
We're like the kids. We're the three kids in the back
Rob was over looking at adult stuff on the computer.
Stop.
I knew Rob was the instigator.
It's Wingin' Wednesday. I'm the kid that's in the middle seat, in the back seat. Mm-hmm. So when you're trying to have a conversation,
you're trying to be the grown-ups,
and
right?
you reach out and you're like just trying to catch their leg, but you're trying to watch the thing, trying to hit somebody.
Oh, come on!
Honestly, the first time I ever did that in my ultimate dad moment of reaching behind to swat at them for one of them for screaming, and I really hurt my shoulder for like 3 days, and I said, no more.
God got you for that one.
Okay, so toward the end of the Supreme Court's argument, Gill versus Whitmore about the future of gerrymandering, there's a story in the New Yorker written about a pretty revealing moment with the newest justice. A lot of people would say it's not necessarily new. People have had their opinion of Neil Gorsuch, but it came when he was talking about the words
when
of the
Ruth
Constitution.
Buzzy Ginsburg woke up.
Well, he said
for a moment.
This is a quote from him. Maybe we can just for a second talk about the arcane matter of the Constitution, which is kind of something that his predecessor, Antonin Scalia, used to go back to it. He was talking about interpreting the Constitution. And he said, and exactly where do we get the authority to revise state legislative lines when the Constitution authorizes the federal government to step in on state legislative matters? It's pretty clear. If you look at the 15th, the 19th, the 26th, the 14th Amendment, Section 2, in other words, what he was saying is the court shouldn't even get involved in that. Well, at that point, Ruth Bader Ginsburg popped up and said, well, where do you think we got one person, one vote from? And apparently the crowd kind of chanted or a little bit of applause or whatever happened there. But it's like we're now starting to kind of see what Gorsuch might do in the Supreme Court.
In
and
the
what
interest
role
of time, you get 60 seconds. Let's roll.
Carol, go. Sorry, you needed an
I'm
intro.
so glad Ruth Buzzy Ginsburg woke up to make that a clever observation. One man, one vote. The Supreme Court gets involved in all sorts of things that they shouldn't be involved in. But I will say this, and there is no question that terrible gerrymandering goes on state by state. But it is up to the states, I believe. The only question where the Supreme Court comes in is in the protection of individual rights under the 14th Amendment, equal protection under the law. So we'll see where this goes. It's one of those thorny issues. You could go either way. But remember, this was Jeffrey Toobin writing in The New Yorker.
Okay,
Stafford?
who's next?
If you want to meet like a ton of constitutional scholars, just get on Facebook and discuss this, because every person there knows every little ruling, and then you realize they pulled it from Wikipedia, and you go back and you say, yeah, maybe you shouldn't use Wikipedia as a source. and look, if you expected anything different from Gorsuch on these type of issues, I think that you are setting yourself up for failure. I want to take a lesson, though, from Ruth Bader Ginsburg, right, and her relationship with Antonin Scalia. I thought Antonin Scalia was a bad justice. I did. But I learned a lesson in that the strongest relationship he had was with Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And I think it's an important lesson to society to say, hey, just because you don't agree politically doesn't mean that we're all not human at the end of the day.
Loving it. 6
so-
seconds.
Wow.
So I hope the Supreme Court gets this one right, and I wish them all the best.
Warren, wrap this one up for us.
Clarence Thomas said that best about them getting along. And he said, we're all friends on that court.
Yeah.
And that we all have our opinions, but we're all friends. And that, I think it's kind of funny. I got a survey to take the other day. It was sent to me by the Democrat Party. And about gerrymandering, do you think it's right and wrong, and blah, blah, blah. And it was all about how the Republican legislatures now are gerrymandering all this stuff to suit themselves. And it just seems to me odd that they didn't really care about that when the Democrats controlled most of the legislatures in all the states, and that was all well and good.
Yeah.
However, I do believe this thing, it was a bad ruling when they came out and said they had to have these minority districts. I think that has been bad for minorities, is that all of their votes are concentrated in one district, so that, they elect somebody from that one district, but they don't really have any votes to make a difference in those other districts. So, and that gerrymandering's been around for a long time, and it's not going to go away.
Rob.
Quick.
All right, we really need to wrap up for time. You can listen to this segment on YouTube. We're going to get it posted.
I just
up
want
there.
to say cfacadiana.org.
cfacadiana.org, that fund for the police officers.
Yes.
Family.
Yes, that is
Wingin'
correct.
Wednesday, each and every Wednesday, brought to you by our friends over at Service Cadillac.
Here's a big secret about Wingin' It Wednesday. Not only do we fight like cats and dogs, or we watch people fight like cats and dogs, actually, an unknown secret, we have an Antonin Scalia, Ruth Bader Ginsburg kind of moment after the show when we all go surfing. We all go surfing down at Grand Isle. So I love to hang 10 with you dudes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, one
They
quick
rode camels
thing
together
I want to
and
ask.
surf.
The Daily Advertiser's got something in here about a fatal drowning. Have you ever seen a non-fatal drowning?
Well,
Good
on
into the
that
segment,
note,
Warren.
little
Thank you.
redundant.
We appreciate your time this morning.
right,
Stafford Barnett, Carol Ross, and Warren Caudle. Thanks for joining us. As always, you can find this segment
Yeah,
at
we got news
kpal965.com just a little
all
bit
that
later
stuff
on.
coming up.